What's up, y'all? How are you doing? Good. Give yourselves a big round of applause. Thank you. Thanks for having me. When you write a book that's called How to Be Black, you get some interesting responses, especially if you've used a very subtle, motivating language to get people to acquire the property. This is fusion-based science right here. Now, I planned a lot for this book, but there were some things I couldn't anticipate, and the way the internet embraced it, visually, comedically, on Instagram, really told an additional story. There were people posing with shots of the book in their bookstores, in their libraries, in their schools, and no matter the race of the person involved, it's always funny when someone's holding a book called How to Be Black. Whether they're super white like this lady here, or whether they're white with a very side-eyeing black friends like these brothers right here. Other species count, and we can even go to a world far, far away. That moment for me was really enlightening and reminded me of the sort of fusion of the world that I've grown up in, a lot of influences that brought me to be able to attack a serious topic with humor, with technology, with media, and it began with my mother. I'm a product of my mama. This is a picture of her in the 1960s, and she was quite a Renaissance woman. She was black, as you can see. Professionally, though, she was politically black. She was down with the Pan-Africanist movement. She was marching in the streets. She was ahead of her time when it came to things like biking or kale or Tai Chi and yoga. She predicted the future in a way that actually did really, really work. And my mother was a technologist before that was a hot thing for anybody to do, much less a single mother, black female in Washington, D.C. in the early 1980s. This was a computer programmer. She worked for the government, coding in COBOL, and having that influence in my life led to a lot of other grounding influences to bring me to where I'm headed. Technology was a big foundation for me. I almost became a computer programmer myself. I didn't quite do it. The placement of the semicolon and how that could just break everything apart, that didn't sit well with me. I'm like, yo, compiler, you know what I mean? The compiler's like, no, I have no idea what you're saying. So I moved on, but I was able to fund my college education in part through technology work, and it's obviously played a big part in my life. Media obsession and knowing things, being informed was a huge component of my childhood. I remember being in high school classes, whenever I might be bored by the teacher, I had NPR in one ear to tune into, which let you know that that teacher must have been really, really boring if NPR was my escape. And politics were unavoidable. As a child of D.C. in the 1980s, it was impossible to avoid it. As a child of this woman facing the camera in a protest, it was impossible to avoid it. The first book I can remember reading as a child was This Is Apartheid, a pictorial introduction. That is some heavy shit to give your kid. And it makes it impossible to avoid politics after that. It's sort of a setting that's hard-coded after that point. The other thing that was very important to me, and I think should be important to all of us, just a quick aside, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They're like an extensible platform. You can swap in different breads, different spreads, different nut-based spreads. It's really good. It's not the focus of my talk, maybe another one, but I just want to give a shout-out to peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Keeps America strong. But the real groundswell that is sort of the cloud through which I walked in life is one of comedy. And it's not because I was funny as a kid. I was a very serious little boy. I showed you my reading list. So it's understandable that I took myself quite seriously. But my mother was an adventurer and an explorer, and she exposed me and my older sister to the world. By the time I was 12, I had seen the entire East Coast. We had a very low-cost method of travel and lodging. It was known as camping. And we would go to various campgrounds and on these road trips listen to comedy. We would listen to Whoopi Goldberg and Garrison Keillor and Bill Cosby, and it started to tune my ear a little bit. By the time I got to high school, I was privileged enough to go to a school that had a high-speed internet connection. And this was internet before images, before ads, before cat videos. It was a simpler time. But this internet was full of text-based jokes, and I started a mailing list sharing these jokes with my friends. By the time I got to college, I was a little more sophisticated, and I started a satirical newsletter. I called it News Flash. I spelled flash with a PH because it was the 90s and things were fat in the 90s. And this winding road led me through strategy consulting around new media, through stand-up comedy, through political blogging, and a side gig bouncing to land at my dream job at America's finest news source. Finally, I had landed at a place that let me combine my love of humor and technology and politics and media covered by one mediocre healthcare plan. It was the American dream. And I pondered here, and I experimented, and I got to play. And I got to go even deeper into my instinct and obsession around bringing humor and technology together, to such an extent that when I left, I started a project that became a company called Cultivated Wit. Now, this name was borrowed from across millennia, from words spoken and written by a man named Horace, who said, "A cultivated wit, one that badgers less, can persuade all the more. Artful ridicule can address contentious issues more competently and vigorously than can severity alone." Horace said his goal was to laugh people out of their vices and follies. And we've never had a higher time for laughter in society than now, in part thanks to technology and thanks to the internet. Look at all the comedic video channels that are out there. Look at our own president using them in high deadpan comedy to launch an official government program, this healthcare program. That's an amazing moment for comedy and for technology and maybe for politics as well. We've got web comics exploding all across the map. And any moment you tune in to Twitter, you're tuning into somebody's own comedy channel. I will let you enjoy this from the oatmeal. It's very enjoyable. I'm sorry I talked over your laughter. I did an experiment a short while ago when I wanted to combine my love of math with my love of black people. And so I counted black people. And I called it Negro spotting. And I'm doing it right now, actually. But I did it at the Republican National Convention. And that's a special place to count black people. It's a very special place. And what was great was Michelle Malkin's people got very upset at me. Flame wars ensued. But I got a number, 143, and that was very good. The entire party, just 143 black people. It's an inspiring time to find people doing their comedy and putting it on the internet. It's also inspiring to find people living humor in places that wasn't designed to host it, these misuseful applications of humor. A woman named Wendy Davis is running for governor of Texas, and she got famous for a long filibuster to combat some restrictions on abortion rights in that state. 5 people are very excited about that. She got famous for the shoes she was wearing as well, and those shoes got famous for the reviews they got on Amazon. Here is a sample review of the shoes Wendy Davis was wearing. Headline, "Men do not try these on." I tried on a pair at the local mall, and suddenly Texas Republicans started telling me what to do with my genitals. That's not what Amazon had in mind when they built their platform. It doesn't matter. Venmo's another platform. It allows you to pay people electronically, and in the memo space, you can add your own explanation of why you're paying someone $10 or $20 or $30, and a lot of these are public. It doesn't matter that the space wasn't designed. Where there's an opening, people will fill it with their own creativity. I'm very inspired by that, and I'm also inspired by a further notion of creating comedy for specific interaction and design moments. There is a company called Fox ADHD, and they are a giftastic operation. They retell the news using their GIF war room through animated looping GIFs. And it uses the magic of that loop and of that flash to communicate the humor clearly in a way that's more than a static graph could have. Hipmunk is another example. This is a travel search engine. What possible innovation could we bring to searching for airline flights besides price and duration and number of layovers? Well, they added an ability to sort by agony. They rolled that all up And they have an adorable chipmunk reducing agony in your life. That's hilarious and useful. There's another example from a large company we're all familiar with, which is Google. And this is one of their products, Google Voice, that lets you send text messages from the internet itself. And as you're typing, you get a countdown of how many characters you have left. And it rolls over when you're in your second message, as this one is right now, counting down. Boom, what happens? That third message, Google judges you. And it's hilarious, and they're right. You should send an email and use their other product. It's called Gmail. Eva Hoffman is a Polish-American writer, and she had something to say about all this. She said, "There's nothing like a gleam of humor to reassure you that a fellow human being is ticking inside a strange face." And we have so many strange faces indeed with our techno-digification, with the glowing rectangles and black mirrors that consume so much of our time, our lives, our relationships. We're putting efficiency as the high watermark of what drives all this technological creativity, the maximum output from minimum input, which is a great philosophy possibly for a factory, a terrible philosophy definitely for your sex life. Some things you want to draw out. You know, efficiency isn't all that defines humanity. And when you think about it further, antisocial people are defining all of our social tools. How did we get to a world where the kid with no friends defined the word friend for 1 billion people? Where else do we allow someone with lack of experience to define the experience for millions of others? Maybe in this building, maybe. But we don't like it when it happens. Eric Severeid, who was part of Edward R. Murrow's reporting crew, said, "Next to power without honor, the most dangerous thing in the world is power without humor." And there is so much power in defining people's relationship to ideas, to institutions, to each other. I'm saying let's add more humor to it. My company does an experiential experiment. We've done 5 so far called Comedy Hack Day. This is where we bring together developers, comedians, and designers. We lock them in a room. We fill that room with beer and whiskey and water. And we encourage them to say yes to each other's ideas and construct things together. Here are some brief examples of what has come out of this experiment. You may have found yourself at the office reading something on the internet you'd rather not know your coworkers, or that you'd rather not know your coworkers know. You'd rather know things that your coworkers know. You know. You're embarrassed by the shit you're reading at work. Enter Timesify, which makes that shit look like the New York Times. It's a browser plugin, adding respectability to your gossip pages. Useful, hilarious, collaboratively designed. Those of you with children will understand how useless and annoying they can be. Especially around 2 years old, and they want you to read to them, but they always want you to read the same thing over and over again. And as you do that, you get dumber and dumber each time, because the opportunity cost of reading those things means you're not reading the New York Times and other credible news sources. But what if there were a solution combining those? What if there were a tool that let you pick the grown-up news you need and make it look like the children's book they want? Enter Magic Story Maker, which another team built that's actually available in the App Store. Useful, hilarious, human, innovation. We had a team build a virtual pet called myrealpuppy.com, which lets you take care of a puppy and maximize its happiness and its life, but its happiness is always declining no matter how well you take care of it. And eventually it dies no matter how much you feed it, because life also ends, and it's called death. And it's a very existential, hilarious, and clearly dark experiment. There have been hundreds of ideas pitched and scores built at Comedy Hack Day. A social network for serious flossers, a berating fitness app which yells at you for not exercising, a toilet which masks the sound of your toilet activities with beautiful classical music in its place. That's something you want to put in your office tomorrow. But my chief example comes back to this building. You guys remember when Congress decided they didn't want to be Congress anymore? They wanted the money, but they shut the whole government down because they were just tired of it. And a lot of us had the same thought. We thought, fuck you, Congress. Fuck you. Yeah? It's a sad world when that's the big clap line. So we saw that opportunity. We also saw, surprisingly, that this domain name, fuckyoucongress.com, was available. It hadn't been pre-registered. Like in 1800, somebody didn't invent the internet just to create this. And so we filled it with a beautifully designed pro-America message that no one could be angry with, and we gave it levels of interaction. The top level lets you flip through stories colorfully retold in a true manner about what the impact of the government shutdown really was. Level 2 allowed you to engage directly with your specific member of this inaugust body. And level 3 encouraged action beyond that interaction. Online voter registration and alignment with Root Strikers and Sunlight Foundation to maybe get new members of Congress or affect the process overall. Comedy is a cathartic exercise. It's also a way that we process the world around us. It is itself a user interface. It's why we turn to The Daily Show and The Onion and stand-up comedy and improv. It's a way to connect us to each other and to ideas in a way that's palatable. And in the techno-fabulous future that we're building, I'm concerned and want to make sure that we don't leave the encoding of that future to today's coders alone. So I want more diverse coders, but also want more diverse mindsets, people who will bring the art, bring the noise and the funk, bring the comedy and the humor, and in so doing, bring the human. I'm calling for us to laugh our way into the future and cultivate our wit. I'm calling for us also to eat more peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Thank you very much.